Greetings, brothers. How you all doing? Thanks for tuning in tonight. So this tonight's show, I guess, a little bit different from normal and a little bit of a different time. So we're going to try and go over the Codex stuff. I realised for a minute that I'm blocking some of the screen here. So this is the stuff that is in our new Codex. And thank you for joining us, Eric, Matt, John, Miles, Dracula, Hydra, Awoken Sheep, Adam, Redblade. There's a lot of people in here, so nice to see. And tonight I'm actually going to be joined by a guest over from Origin Painting. It's Evan. I'm sure some of you guys have watched his videos. Are you there, Evan?
Yep, you got me?
Yeah, I was trying to put you on screen. Apparently...
Oh, if you can't figure it out, don't worry, I'm not that pretty.
I had it working right before we started. One second, let's get this figured out. Oh yes, because it was maybe. There we go. Do you see? We see Evan as well. Great. I guess because I minimised the window. Learning things every time on these live streams. So thanks for joining us, Evan. Do you want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on in the first place. I'm Evan. I'm from Origin Painting. Really small hobby channel. Focus mainly on painting techniques, stuff up to tabletop plus standard. Nothing crazy. Lots of airbrush basics, and then build-ups from there. But yeah, I'm super happy to hang out with you. Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for being here, man. Yeah, no, I enjoy your videos every week, so it's nice to finally collaborate with another Blood Angels player. So, yeah, I mean, we've had the book now for a few days. I guess in the chat, some people still haven't got their book. I mean, I was frustrated that mine was delayed a few days. I know yours was delayed as well, Evan, so I mean, if you still don't have it, I'm sorry. I guess if you still don't have it, if you've got any questions, fire them into the chat. And if you see anything in chat as well, Evan, that you want to jump in on, please just say, and we'll do it. Okay.
I got mine in Friday, so it still counts.
Okay.
I can push up my audio output 1 sec.
Okay. So, yeah, let's have a look at chapter approved rules then. This is the first thing I wanted to look at. So, hey, Andrew, the Iron Hands commander. Iron Hands are not better than Blood Angels, just so you know. And yeah, I wanted to look at chapter approved rules because I guess these are going to be key for playing in 9th edition, right? We get 3 new chapter approved missions that we can take. And yeah, I haven't actually picked any of these myself yet, but a couple of them seem pretty interesting. The first one is Purge the Enemy. So at the start of your command phase, you can select one Blood Angels character from your army, and then your opponent must also select a character. If they don't have a character, they must choose their warlord, and it's 5 victory points if you challenge an enemy character and you kill them. It's 10 victory points if you kill them from a melee attack, and it's 15 victory points if you kill them with the character that you nominated. So, I like this one in principle. However, if the enemy's character or warlord flies, I think it could be a problem because they could just fly and kite you around the battlefield. So, I played Sisters of Battle this week, and my friend Andrew's warlord was Celestine, so I didn't pick it because I was like 15 victory points to try and chase a character down to kill with your character when they fly. Might not be such a great pick. No Mercy, No Respite is a new one where we can get 3 victory points at the end of your turn if one or more enemy unit has been destroyed by a death company, so you can max the whole 15 points there. You'd probably need to run a couple of death company units at least, though, to make this one viable. Death from Above will score 2 victory points at the end of your turn if any enemy unit was destroyed by a Blood Angels unit from your army that was set up in the battlefield in the reinforcement step of any of your movement phases, and it's 3 points if the model instead was a character. So you could max this one on 12, and the key thing is it's on any turn being set up as a reinforcement. And with their new stratagem to let you redeploy, I believe it's on Upon Wings of Fire, could be a fairly easy one to get between like 8 and 12 points. And I think when you're picking secondary objectives, you really want to think about just like, you just want to get 10 points from every secondary. Like, you don't want to be too greedy. Because if you are greedy, you can end up getting nothing. Hey, welcome. Thank you for subscribing. And finally, I'm going to have to wait for that subscribe banner to remind myself what Battlefield Supremacy is. So that's the one where it's 4 victory points at the end of your turn if there are more Blood Angels units from your army in the enemy deployment zone than there are enemy units in your deployment zone. And there is sort of like some cheesy ways I was thinking about that you could do this, right? You could have a drop pod, which is a unit, and it could have a tactical squad in it, or like a stern guard squad with, let's say, 2 characters. So you could drop that down in the enemy deployment zone in turn 1. That's 4 units in the enemy deployment zone. That one seems like, if you just want to maximize the secondary, you could probably score it pretty well. So, Evan, do you have any thoughts on those at the moment?
Yeah, so I've kind of got the same problem with all of these, and mostly it's that it's dictating how you play your game. Like you had mentioned, especially when you're trying to chase down and fight a single warlord, they can either kite you, or they can put it back where you're going to have to chase or charge their entire army to get to them. Stuff like that. Fury of the Lost, it's got to be Death Company units, as you noted. Out of all of them, I probably like Relentless Assault the best. Just because, as you said, we're always going to have somebody in their deployment zone.
Yeah, I can't decide, right? Like, I did check up on this, and you can pick one of these secondaries. You can also pick one secondary from the Space Marine book, and then the rest are like the generic secondaries from chapter approved. Sorry, I was going to say tactics approved. I don't know where that came from. And I do, like, if you've watched any of my battle reports, you'll know that I love Oath of Moment from the Space Marine Codex. I think it's so easy to score in, and it's so strong. Like, it's I want to say it's a greedy one you can score easily. Like, it's, if you don't fail a leadership test in any of your turns, you get 1 point, right? So it's like, as a Space Marine, you almost get 4 or 5 points guaranteed. Like, most battles you don't fail any leadership tests, so that's an easy 4 or 5 points. You get a point every turn if you kill a monster, a character, or a vehicle. Again, like in most battle rounds, or at least let's say 3 of the 5 battle rounds, you're going to kill a monster, character, or vehicle. So that's another easy 3 points. And then the final part of that one is 2 points for any unit wholly within 6 of the middle of the board. Oh, I think I just lost Evan. Oh no, there we go. So yeah, picking Oath of Moment for me at the moment is very core. I can't decide if Battlefield Supremacy is better than Linebreaker, which Linebreaker is the default one, which is just have 2 units in the enemy deployment zone to score 4 points per turn. And if you do with that with a drop pod, then it's just, as long as your drop pod and the units coming out survive, maybe it's a little bit more reliable than Battlefield Supremacy. It's hard to say. In chat, Crag says, Relentless Assault seems really nice since it's the end of your turn. I didn't notice that. It's the end of your turn. Okay, so yeah, you could just... in turn 1, scoring 4 points, there's not many secondaries. It's easy to score 4 points in turn 1 with a drop pod or something like that. And yeah, I guess you could combo it up with something like just deploy Scramblers for another number of points. Turn Evan up, he's very quiet. Is that something you can fix, Evan? This is the first time I've had a guest on the show.
Yep, I'm working on my end. We'll see. I'm not sure if it's coming across different audio volumes in Meet.
Oh,
YouTube.
I have my desktop audio turned way down. Let me turn it up. All right, go speak now.
All right, let's take a look at that. Yeah, it looks like I'm coming across your desktop channel.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, so exactly. I think that will probably sort it out. If someone in chat can tell us how Evan's sounding, that would be useful. I will know for next time. Sorry.
Thought I was screwing that one up. A big debut, can't blow it.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe just redo an intro real quick if you want. Sorry about that.
Oh, real quick, for any of you guys that didn't hear, I'm Evan. I'm from over in Origin Painting, fairly small channel. Do tabletop plus level stuff. Real quick, short videos, usually 6 to 10 minutes. If you're interested in mostly Warhammer stuff, give me a look. If you got anything you want to see painted, let me know. I'm open for suggestions.
Cool, thank you. Sorry about that, Evan. There was always going to be some teething troubles. All right, so yeah, next we're going to look at the Lost rules. And yeah, the Lost is kind of interesting now, I guess, right? So we can put one captain and up to 2 lieutenants into the Death Company, and we can do that now. Whereas in previous edition it cost command points, now it just costs actual points. And 20 points for a captain and 10 points for lieutenant. And I guess what they gain by that is they gain the Black Rage, which gives them the +1 attack and the 6+ feel no pain. And I guess by being in the Death Company, they can then get access to the refusal to die, the 5+ feel no pain. All right, people can hear you much better. Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, people can. Sorry, you get the Black Rage, you get the 6+ feel no pain, and it's 10 points for lieutenants and 20 points for captains. And yeah, the refusal to die for 1 CP to get basically feel no pain on a 5s for a single phase. So, in terms of finally getting captains and lieutenants into the Death Company, I think I really like this. But in practice, when I was looking at it last week, I feel like unfortunately the Primaris Marines still have very limited weapon options. You know, when you compare to the old Marines, I guess, who are still allowed like lists of pistols, combi weapons, any melee weapon they want, whereas the Primaris Marines, they're much more like, what would you call them, like carbon copy loadouts, like you only get 1 or 2 options?
Yeah, they're much more standard, and even just their mobility options are a lot more limited. So at this point, Primaris are kind of still a hard sell.
Yeah, and that for me is another big issue, right? Like no jump packs on any of the characters. Like I guess we can run impulsors. I think impulsors are probably going to still be quite popular, right? But like nobody's running repulsors. They're just a bullet magnet, and they're not a very survivable bullet magnet. I feel like. Maybe people are running like repulsor executioners, but no one's running the default impulsors, and that is still the only 10-man transport for Primaris, which to me, I would have thought by now we could have had another 10-man transport, or I would like to get rid of the silly rule where Primaris can't fit in the old vehicles and the old guys can't fit in the Primaris vehicles. Like I think, like I just don't like that rule very much at all.
Yeah, I can see the limitation going backwards since the Primaris are a larger scale. But honestly, the old guys should have no reason not to fit in an impulsor. Especially if you wanted to throw, I don't know, any of your old chaplains or sanguinary priests or something in there.
Yeah, I'm actually on chapter 22 of the new Dante book. I haven't got to the point, but apparently at one point in the book he gets in an impulsor, and people were very upset about this, saying like...
I've seen that, yeah.
What the hell, Dante got an impulsor, he's broken all the rules. So yeah, I mean, if you think back to last edition, what was common in last edition was like a captain, right, paying the 1 CP to get the death visions, which is very much similar to what they have now, only I guess last edition he would re-roll his own hits because he was still a captain, whereas now he basically... characters are much more potent with troops, and I think I kind of like that, right? Like it makes the game feel a bit grander as opposed to like I think in the last edition, like I would run armies with like 6 or 7 HQ, or maybe not 7 HQ, but 7 characters would be, you know, if you think the sanguinary priests were just elites back then, so you could easily have like 7-8 characters. So I don't know if this changes too much for us. I think you're still going to be able to run a Death Company and a captain with them. And I think you can do something with the lieutenant if you wanted to. I mean, are you going to run anything?
I feel like if you're going to do that Lost, you may as well just do a standard old Marine captain. Give him his jump pack and have him run with the Death Company.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I did Math Hammer last week, and I think there is some value there. I guess we'll be touching on stratagems very quickly. or next actually. Stratagems are next up. Yeah, let me just double check. Yeah, we're going to look at some stratagems next. So we get 2 pages of stratagems, and a lot of them, like a bunch of these ones in the middle, are like. Well, I mean, we could just look at them, I guess, and we'll see. But some of them, it doesn't feel like they added as much as I had hoped, maybe, would be the way I want to put it. Descent of the Angels, that gives us the ability to reroll charges. Sorry, not reroll charges. Each time a charge roll is made, you can ignore any modifiers to the charge, and you add 1 to that unit's attack rolls. So this is an add 1 in both shooting and close combat. So while I kind of like that, like quite often in a battle I would drop down a Death Company and just try and make like a 9-inch charge, or it would be a 9-inch charge but I need to roll an 8, right? So need to make a 9-inch charge just to take out some backfield objective. So for 1 CP, making all those Death Company, and there'd always be some Thunderhammers in that group, be able to hit a bit more reliably with their pistols and a bit more reliably with their Thunderhammers, and I guess their Chainswords would hit on 2s now. So I mean, I can see value in Descent of the Angels. I think the charge modifier thing is very niche though, right? There's not a whole lot of things that are going to affect your charge modifier. Again, we got sort of a niche stratagem where we get to roll additional reroll dice. Is it when you fight Black Legion? I mean, how often do you fight Black Legion? 1 in 50 games, right? Yeah. So super niche. Refusal to die for the Death Company, I guess. 5+ feel no pain, but it's only for a single phase, so it's quite costly. So and you have to choose as soon as the target is selected for the attack, right? So like you kind of need to do some maths in your head when your opponent's saying like, I'm going to attack the Death Company with this, and try and work it out quite a bit in advance. So again, it's kind of hard to always get value out of this. Welcome Castellan, thanks for tuning in. And yeah, so the only gripe some people had was that the chaplains no longer get the Black Rage ability. I think that was gone in 8th edition. I think Lamarta's kept it, but I don't think anyone else got Black Rage in 8th edition. Aggressive Onslaught, I guess, is a Flesh Tearers one. I haven't actually read this. So you can move a consolidation of 6. That's fine. Angel Sacrifice is an interesting one, and I knew about it in the battle that I had this week, but it's going to be very situational, and what it does is it makes all enemy units within engagement range, they have to fight against your character model. So if you have an enemy unit and a squad fighting against you, you can try and position the character, I guess, so that he can take the brunt of the attacks, and I assume the character would have like an invulnerable save or a feel no pain. But in practice, it's going to be very difficult, especially if the opponent knows that that's something you can do. They're gonna position their characters, or they're going to position their models so that they aren't all in base contact with the character, or they can't all fight the character. And if they can't, then it mentions in here that it's models, not unit, right? So like if 2 models could fight the character, then that's all that would fight. The rest of the models would be able to fight whoever they want to fight, right?
Yeah, it's going to be extremely hard to pull off more than, I don't know, maybe 5 models. But we'll see. It's going to be situationally dependent, but it'll come in clutch a couple times.
Yeah, in the battle I had, I couldn't, there's terrain in the way and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it might save you 1 in 50 times. Yeah, okay, and then this interesting one is Spiritual Might, so basically you can do an additional power in the Psychic phase, which I kind of like. I mean, I guess if you really needed an additional power at some point throughout the game, we now have the ability to do that, so that's kind of cool. The Visions of Sanguinius, this one's actually a little bit confusing, right, because it says, obviously, maybe we'll go forward a couple of pages first and just look at the Death Company visions, right? Because let me find it here. So, Death Visions. Once per battle, when this model is selected to fight, right? So you can only do it when basically you choose the fight, not when you're charged. You can use one of the Death Visions listed below. The same Death Vision can be not used more than once per battle. So basically that says to me, when you choose to fight, you can either reroll all your hits and get, +1 attacks for every 5 models within range, or you can gain a 3+ invulnerable save, I guess, for like that round of combat. Sorry, a 3+ invulnerable save to the end of the turn, but it seems a bit strange that you have to pick it when you fight, so if the enemy fights first, you can't use this death vision. And then the third one is you and the enemy roll off, so that basically means you both roll a d6. If it's a draw, you roll again, and if you win, the enemy takes d3 plus 3 mortal wounds, right? So that's your 3 death visions, and you can use 1 per turn, and you can use it only when you are selected to fight. That's my understanding of it. And then it says, use the stratagem when a Death Company character model from your army is selected to fight. That model can do one of the following. If the model has already used a death vision, it can use another this phase. If that model has not already used a death vision, it can use 2 different visions. So I kind of don't understand condition 1, right? Because it's like, you either have used your death vision when you were selected to fight or you haven't. So this stratagem's just letting you always use 2 death visions when you're selected to fight.
I think the hang up is that they can only trigger it once per battle, per model. So this would let you trigger a second one in the same battle on the same model.
I didn't realise. I missed that part. Nice, thank you for clarifying. Alright, so you can only use 1 death vision per model. It's as well as only one. You can, as well as only being able to use all 3 throughout the game, right?
Yep. 3 different models, 3 different visions, or use visions to double up.
Yeah. If that model has not already used a death vision, it can use 2 different death visions this phase. Okay, so I guess like if you're only going to take like 1 character, then you can only use 2 of the 3 death visions. Nice. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for clarifying that.
Got it.
What's your opinion on the Dante books, Blood Angels Commander? I'm really enjoying Darkness in the Blood. I think I kind of don't want to. Is saying something that happened to Mephiston in December 2019 a spoiler? I guess probably not at this point. But if you haven't read Darkness in the Blood, Lagmeister, on like, I won't say what chapter, but Mephiston goes through the Rubicon Primaris in Darkness of the Blood. So I mean, everybody knows now Mephiston is Primaris. Obviously, that model came out. I think it was either December or January. It was about a year ago now. So if you want to actually see how he transformed during that, then you want to pick up the new Darkness in the Blood books. If you need an Audible link for referral, we can hook you up with that as well. So definitely ask for that. Now that, yeah, Death Guard are now going to be changed actually, so they're immune. So what is it? They basically, all Death Guard units now have a duty eternal rather than they're disgustingly resilient. Crag has said that like with something like Assault Intercessors or Death Company Intercessors, that's actually a big nerf against Death Guard. Yeah, I mean, if you've got even regular Death Company with chainswords are going to do a lot more damage against Death Guard. They're going to be 33% less survivable. And I mean, it's a bit crazy now that, like, with the Red Rampage stratagem that we're going to come to in a second, we can actually make our chainswords -3, right? So, Death Guard only saving on 6s with no disgustingly resilient. Sure, they have 2 wounds now, so I mean, I guess it'll balance out that way. But I guess we kind of expect all the enemy Chaos Heretic Astartes are all going to go to 2 wounds, right? And yeah, someone else has said Descent of the Angels is really nice with Plasma Inceptors. Yeah, I think Inceptors with Descent of the Angels is going to be super, super good. I really think if you drop like a captain with them as well, something to give them the ability to reroll 1s, that's going to be brutal. Especially against large squads, you can just fire on high power. You know, especially like we just talked about, if it's Death Guard or something, you'll be able to do a lot of damage with Plasma Inceptors now. Angel's Exemplar is an interesting one, and it lets us basically take an additional Warlord trait. So you can take 1 Warlord trait from the Space Marine Codex, then you can take 1 from the Blood Angels Codex, or you can take 2 from the Blood Angels Codex. I haven't seen much synergy in taking 2 from the Blood Angels Codex yet, but I think the ability to do both is a pretty interesting choice. Angel's Ascendant lets a sergeant take a special issue war gear, so it's almost like making one of your sergeants a character to take a special issue war gear, and the ones that they can take are digital weapons, flesh render grenades, mastercrafted weapons. So I guess you could take a 4 damage Thunderhammer on like a Vanguard veteran sergeant if you wanted, or Quake bolts. And I think a lot of people like Quake bolts on a sergeant. Someone actually said this week that they played a heavy intercessor, a squad of heavy intercessors designed to hold the backfield, but the sergeant has Quake bolts, so he can shoot that at he can shoot his executioner bolt rifle like 42 inches across the battlefield with those Quake bolts, and basically make one enemy unit +1 to hit. I think it's kind of a play on an idea, right? It's a pretty cool idea. Lucifer patterned engines being able to overcharge 6 inches is being able to advance 6 inches is average at best. Is there anything you want to say on those ones? Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Going back to the heavy intercessors, yeah, it's definitely a good option. You're gonna have to make sure you got some sight lines though. Otherwise, it's just gonna hang out back there and not get much done.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. The others, it's fun. It gives you flexibility. Both Exemplar and Ascendant do. So flexibility is always good.
Yeah, I think with Exemplar, I think it's the one option we have like to basically supercharge that Librarian Dreadnought. And yeah, I mean, I was surprised this week to find out the Librarian Dreadnought does better than Mephiston in just about every category at the moment.
As if he needed supercharging, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Librarian Dreadnought for me, it's quite a core choice. I guess maybe, like I said, the list we're going to look over shortly, I suppose, is going to have something different with Librarian, so that'll be interesting to see. Red Rampages are 1 CP army wide. If you're in the Assault Doctrine is active for your army, all rolls of 6 will be +1 AP. So this is good in some senses, right? But it's also kind of worthless in other senses. I feel like people said, if you have Assault Intercessors or Death Company Intercessors or a lot of Chainswords, this will be great. But if you think about like Sanguinary Guard, who are already rocking -3 or -4 in Assault Doctrine, moving them up to -5 is going to make absolutely no difference, right? If you're on -4, and you know, there's no difference really between -4 and -5. Most people have no save at that point, and if they do have a save, they're only going to be saving on 6s, so it's going to be very minor. They kept the ability for us to heroically intervene with units, but now it's only Sanguinary Guard, so it's quite a cool power for Sanguinary Guard. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Vanguard Tactics thing, but something the guy from Vanguard Tactics is doing with his Sanguinary Guard, which is very clever, is he's parking them in terrain just off an objective, right? So if the opponent wants to move into the objective on their turn, then he'll pay the 1 CP to heroically intervene 6 and do a lot of damage with that Sanguinary Guard. So I can totally see that. It's totally nice. Like it was very nice before having a way to heroically intervene with anything. I used to use it on like Dreadnoughts all the time and like surprise people. Like, hey, this this Leviathan Dreadnought's going to heroically intervene 6 inches with his like strength 16 claw. I guess we've lost that, but we've still got it with the Sanguinary Guard. So I guess that's kind of fun. The Forlorn Fury, the way it's worded at the moment, it sounds like for 1 CP you can move a character before the battle, or a 5-man unit, and then for 2 CP you could move a 10-man unit. And because this happens before the battle, you could play this multiple times on multiple units. I think it's pretty broken at the moment. I feel like an FAQ will maybe clear this up.
I'd agree with you. I think it's going to be a lot of fun until that FAQ comes out, though.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, how much fear we could put in our opponents. The Bolt Relic would also make things like... Sorry, on you go.
I was just going to say, if you really wanted to commit to Forlorn Fury, just load yourself up with, 3-4 units of Death Company and move them all up turn 1.
Yeah, that
would have a little fun.
That would synergize nice with that special issue, that character having that heavy intercessor having those Quake bolts. And someone said in the chat, I just missed it. Yeah, Crag said that if you had Quake bolts, your Librarian Dreadnought would be hitting on 2s. That would be brutal, yeah. I mean, yeah, he gets 10 attacks, so it's pretty considerable.
Get the suppressors back there. Make sure they can't overwatch you.
Yeah, that as well. I actually like that more. What is the range on suppressors? It's like 48 inches, right? I think it's an auto
48.
Cannon. Yeah.
Let me take a look.
I'm pretty sure it's just an autocannon. Suppressors.
You can split your squad's fire, and you only have to hit them. You don't even have to wound them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I bought suppressors last edition when they were a bit weaker, right? They used to only be 2 autocannon shots. Now they're 3, so they're a little bit stronger. I could totally see just having a squad in the backfield to do something like that might be really interesting. So like Forlong Fury would be pretty cool.
You'd be at 48 inch, strength 7, -1, 2 damage.
Yeah.
But like I said, you don't even have to wound them. You just hit them, and they can't shoot you.
And then, so upon Wings of Fire got changed as well. You used to be able to redeploy in the same turn. Now you redeploy 1 turn later. Now again, if anyone caught Vanguard Tactics stream, he did a really interesting thing with Wings of Fire in that he actually started, I think it was a big squad of Sanguinary Guard. He just started them on the board, so that like almost like a show of strength. Like, I am putting the Sanguinary Guard on this wing, so you can expect them to be going here. And then in turn 1, I think he got first turn. He just paid 1 CP and instantly just picked them up. And it was like, I'm just going to deep strike them now in turn 2. So your opponent has like deployed, thinking, oh shit, I have to react to 10 Sanguinary Guard coming in on the left flank. Guess what? Now they're off the board. I don't know where they're coming in at all, and my deployment has now been a bit screwed up. So I think Upon Wings of Fire actually has some value, even though being able to move within the 1 turn was really strong before. I still think it could also be used very effectively. Another interesting thing might be is if you did Forlong Fury a squad or 2 forward and killed some core targets. If your squad survives, then you could just Upon Wings of Fire, take them back off, and then just bring them in somewhere else as a deep strike a couple of turns later. So I think there's some value in that.
If you're going to pick at the flanks, try and pick off 1 unit out there and then get them out. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, so, and then I guess the last one, I mean, we've got another Flesh Tearer one here where it's in the morale phase. They can basically make more units run away for the enemy. They subtract 1 from their combat attrition tests, right? So I think that means that if they roll 1s and 2s, and possibly 3s, I guess it depends on how much the squad they lose, more guys will die, I guess, against Flesh Tearers. Someone said Quake bolts would work on a Tech Marine. Of course they would, because I guess the Tech Marine hits on 2s, right? I always forget that Tech Marine has a ballistic skill of 2. And then Chalice Overwhelming, our last stratagem, lets the Sanguinary Priest place 2 models into Assault Doctrine in 1 turn. And do you know what? I haven't... When I first read the rule about placing units into Assault Doctrine, I was firmly of the opinion that you didn't get the bonus attack from this. I've seen enough people now running with that bonus attack that I think it's probably okay. And if Games Workshop are unhappy, they're going to FAQ it. But I haven't personally, I haven't run it myself yet. But I mean, I guess if you're running a priest in some sort of bubble with Sanguinary Guard, with Vanguard Veterans, you're really pushing forward in turn 1 or 2, being able to throw a bunch of them into Assault Doctrine earlier than turn 3 is generally very strong, right?
Yep, especially if you get the early push, especially turn 1 before you charge guys with bolters and they get minus AP. If you can keep it in 1 before they get to turn 2, their Overwatch is going to be a lot less dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been running suppressors, but now that you talk about it, I think it's kind of a smart move. And yeah, it is a smart move to use the Sanguinary unit just to threaten the enemy and then move them around. And yeah, I mean, Scottish Man in Blue says, don't forget the Death Company can Forlong Fury 2 for 2 CP, but I think he's only going to get to Forlong Fury 6 inches, right? I don't know why they removed... The Death Company Dreadnought used to be 8, a movement of 8. I don't know why they made it 6. I mean, it's supposed to be like a howling, uncontrollable ball of death, and it's just like, well, just move 6. You know, it's like, come on, he's going to be running for sure, right?
Yeah, initially I was looking at just a Suicide Torpedo Dread, but some of the guys on your page kind of talked me off that ledge.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. I have a Death Company Dreadnought and the Librarian Dreadnought, and it just seems like the Librarian is a lot more reliable.
Having wings is huge.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about stratagems? Is there anything I missed that you like the look of or anything like that? No? Okay, cool. I mean, I don't think any of these are like... I feel like this edition is going to be quite balanced. Like, I don't think there's anything in here that's super broken. Maybe Forlong Fury needs to get changed, but apart from that, the rest of it seems okay to me. I guess like some people were pretty upset about losing our 3d6 charge. I think that used to be Descent of the Angels, but I think this +1 to hit, it just means using different units. I think you can still get really strong results out of that, right? I mean, the 3d6 charge was nice. I mean, it was an almost guaranteed charge, but there is other ways for us to get charge rerolls and stuff now.
It's definitely a lot more balanced now, and for the game, that's good overall. But being able to deep strike and 95% get into combat that turn was huge. So good for the game, bad for us.
Yeah, I know. Do you know what, though? In the last edition, 95% of the time, you say it was a 95% charge. 95% of the time you're using that charge, it was like your Smash Captain against like a super heavy tank or something, right? It was just, you were always just... I mean, like, I'm sort of glad they've maybe got away from... like a single unit being able to do something like that. Like, I know he was in the chat a little bit earlier. My friend Andrew, he plays Iron Hands, and he had the Straya super heavy tank or whatever it was called, and he's an Iron Hands player, so he's able to do -1 damage on the super heavy tank. It's like it was called Iron Stone. So basically, it's basically a duty eternal for super heavy tank, which is toughness 8, 26 wounds, right? And my 100-point Smash Captain killed it in a single turn. He just jumped in and did like 42 wounds to it, and he's like, what? And he was like, it's -1 damage. And I was like, alright, so, it's still 32 wounds in a single turn, and you can't save against it. And he was like, oh,
just by slightly less now.
Yeah, so I mean, it was fun, but it was a bit broken, I guess, right?
I feel your observation earlier about them kind of tempering the characters and making it more of a mixed role game is probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, and while I like that, I mean, I guess if we have a little minute near the end and we talk about characters, I'm a little bit upset about our characters, though. Like, it seems like all the characters... I love that you can build your own characters now, right? You can build a chapter master, you can build a chief librarian. I mean, that's something that I feel like we've probably all been wanting to do for a while, right? For example, I don't know, just character A or B doesn't fit your army and you just wish you'd a different war gear or something, you know? So I think it's super great that they've let us do that, but at the same time, it almost feels like all these characters that we can build now for like equal or cheaper points are just as good, or if not better, than like our quote-unquote legendary named characters. So I guess it's a bit of a toss-up, but I mean, I do like the focus more towards armies rather than just like, eight HQs or something like that in your army list. 8 HQs and a ton of scouts, right? Because you needed to always have those scouts to flesh out battalions.
Yeah, I was a little sad they went to elites, but I get why they did it. I liked them as troops, but yeah.
Do you know what? I'm just glad I don't have to paint any more scouts, to be honest.
Any more cheap little flak that's not going to do anything and just sit there on an objective. I
just hated painting them. They're just like one of the worst models. I did have some fun times with them after we got Savage Echoes, and scouts with knives were legitimately killing things. But at the same time, I just didn't want to paint any more scouts. So, if we jump on to Warlord traits next, then like Speed of the Primarch, it's been around for a while. It's still not great. And currently Mephiston has it, so if you pick Mephiston as your Warlord, you have Speed of the Primarch. It lets him fight first, but he does still fight after charging units. So, I mean, you can still get charged with Mephiston, you still can get killed before he gets to do anything. Generally, I don't pick Speed of the Primarch. Artisan of War is an interesting one, where one of our characters now, instead of... in addition to another relic, we can basically take a second relic. So with the ability from, I think it's the Arx Angelicum from the previous page of stratagems, we're now at a point where we can take you can take 2 warlord traits and a relic on one character, or you can take 1 warlord trait. The second warlord trait would be this Artisan of War, which gives you the access to like a special issue war gear and then a relic. So you can have like a character that's got a warlord trait, special issue war gear, and a relic. So I mean, I guess that's why I'm saying you can now build characters that are significantly more powerful than our named characters. Is it a problem? I guess not. But is it sad that you've spent all this time and money buying and painting up your name characters, and it's just like, yeah, they just sit in the drawer because they're not competitive anymore? I mean, I guess 6.5 a dozen. We have Soul Warden, which is quite an interesting one. So we can basically do a 6-inch bubble around the Warlord against mortal wounds. Now, I guess against some armies, that's going to be super good, right? Like Necrons spring to mind right there with their Catan powers, and I guess Death Guard used to do a lot of mortal wounds as well in close combat, like Mortarion and some of the other Death Guards spit out mortal wounds, Typhus maybe as well. So I guess it's a situational pick, and situational picks are difficult for me, right? Because like when I make an army list, I want to be making the army list against everything. I don't want to be tweaking and choosing different things, because right, if you go to a tournament, then you're screwed, right? Because it's like, well, I've built this army that's great against this. So situational warlord trait, Soul Warden. And again, if you do have a chaplain can take a litany that does the exact same thing, called Litany of Faith. Heroic Bearing is interesting, and that is Dante's one now. And in the last edition, it was just you auto pass morale next to Dante. Now it is you get +1 to your leadership within 9, and his aura is increased 3 inches. So you don't obviously just have to take it on Dante. Any captain, lieutenant, chapter master, or chaplain can have their auras improved to 9 inches. So the chaplain aura improved to 9 inches is pretty interesting. And somebody actually, I think stuff like Canticle of Hate, I think somebody said in one of the army lists, with this 9-inch buff zone, could be pretty huge. 9 inches is a long distance, like in the terms of like a melee combat deep into the game, right? Like 9 inches is buffing 2-3 squads of units. It could be huge. Gift of Foresight, another new one. Before, I think Gift of Foresight, we had it last edition, and it was a 6+ Feel No Pain reroll 1s. Now it is reroll 1 hit, 1 wound, and 1 save for this Warlord. Now, I used that this week, and the reroll 1 hit and 1 wound I honestly forgot to use a couple of times, so I didn't feel that part was super advantageous. But the reroll 1 save was actually really difficult, right? Because like the opponent knew I could reroll 1 save, so he'd maybe shoot me like with some bolters, then he'd maybe shoot me with a plasma, then he'd shoot me with a multi-melta, and you never knew when to use your reroll on 1 save, right? It was like, I felt like it would have just been much stronger on the character if I'd just taken like the 5+ Feel No Pain or something, because it was like, maybe if you knew what you were going to get hit with, but you don't, right, in the course of a battle, so your opponent's going to try and whittle you down with lots of little weapons or something, and it's like, I need to now use my reroll of save or something, and then he's going to hit you with a multi-melta after you've used it, right? Whereas if you just had like something consistent, like a 5+ Feel No Pain, it would be better. So Gift of Foresight on paper, I thought sounded really interesting, but I guess we'll have to see, right? I guess you guys will have to run it a couple of times, but my first thought on it was like not as good as I thought it was going to be. And then Selfless Valor, one that we've had for a while, just increases our heroic intervention range to 6. Again, it can be definitely usable. And if we talk about trying to make our Dreadnought a powerhouse, our Librarian Dreadnought, we could give him the 2 Warlord traits, and we could just... It'd be nice if he can heroically intervene 6, especially after he flies towards the enemy,
Yeah, so that's interesting that you found Gift of Foresight to kind of fall flat for you, because looking at it, to me it seems like one that would be, I don't know, number 1 or number 2. Just the amount of CP that you would burn in your rerolls, even on just the hits and the wounds. And then saves, I don't know. Like you said, it's very difficult to tell when you're going to get the most use out of it, when you get the best result. But if you can stop 2-3 damage a turn with that save reroll.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I mean, maybe like my enemy just hit me with a lot of -1 stuff, and it didn't feel like that valuable. Whereas I feel like a Feel No Pain would have felt more valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so a little bit situational.
Yeah, I guess definitely situational, and yeah, I run it on the chaplain, who is toughness 5 with 7 wounds, and I guess one thing that I've been considering more recently is like if you're, as much as you want to maybe reroll a hit and reroll the damage, I guess this is why I run Iron Resolve a lot on that Librarian Dreadnought, because like if your character dies, then like what's the value in the dead character? Like sometimes it's just like generally in close combat with Blood Angels, right? Like our characters do so much damage with the Red Thirst, and anytime anyone charges us or whatnot, I usually feel like being alive for one more turn is probably more valuable than like being able to do some reroll hits or something like that, right? Because we know normally when we get into like turn 3, we just start chewing through the enemy. Like I think most people know if Blood Angels are in close in turn 3 and beyond, like you have a big problem.
Yep.
So
damage mitigation early on is definitely a huge plus.
Yeah, and I think now the fact that you can take Artisan of War, and so you could have that chaplain. The way I think I would run the chaplain now, the way I did run it was took the Wise Orator, so you can cast 2 litanies a turn and they cast on 2s. We took the Benediction of Fury, so he has that 3 damage Crozius that does mortal wounds on 6s, and then I took Gift of Foresight as his third thing, which was fine. I mean, I guess the Gift of Foresight reroll saved a couple of wounds throughout the game, but I think if we'd had Adamantium Mantle, it would have probably saved maybe a few more, and I think he died in like turn 3 or 4, and I feel like if it had been the other way, he might have survived, and if he'd survived, like he was crushing everything he was in combat with, right? That chaplain is generally very good. And then, of course, because he's a chaplain, he can cast Mantra of Strength on himself. So he's got like an 8 strength Crozius that hits on 2s. 6s do mortal wounds. So So I think there's nothing amazing there, but I mean, I guess the amazing thing is now that we can take 2 Warlord traits, or the Warlord trait, the Relic, and the Special Issue War Gear, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then one thing I missed the first time I looked at this was the name character and warlord traits at the bottom here.
I missed that as well, actually.
Just specifying which characters are going to get which traits if you use your named characters. So
yeah, I kind of wish maybe they should just get. I mean, maybe it makes sense for like Dante, but like in competitive, I guess this is why building your own characters now, to me, is more appealing than picking some of the general named characters, I guess. Just you can make them more survivable, you can make them a little bit more flexible.
Yep.
But I mean, I guess it's up to you.
I totally agree with you there, and it's a shame because you love the characters, but you can't pick their warlord trait, you can't give them relics, you can't give them special war gear. They are what they are. And a lot of times that doesn't fit exactly what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I mean, some of them, the points cost as well for some of them is questionable as well. And then one thing that seems like a really strange thing, right? Brother Corbulo just got this amazing aura where you can put everyone into Assault Doctrine, and Brother Corbulo is the one guy that doesn't have a jump pack. Like all these other Blood Angels, all these other Blood Angels characters. No one thought like, hey, do you think it would be useful if Brother Corbulo, the medic, had a jump pack? Nah, he's fine.
You'd think 2 of them could just grab them under each arm and give them a ride.
Yeah, take them with them, yeah. So, all right, so we got back, next up then, I guess, is we got back to Sanguinary Discipline. And it's very similar to what it was before. What's interesting, though, is they made every power just a warp charge of 6. So there's no... I guess the way to look at that is it's just a 73% chance to cast your power. It's nice and simple. It makes it simple, right? And then I guess, I was actually... Quickening has been changed a little bit. It used to be you added some... Quickening used to be, I think it was you added 3 to your charge roll and you got your D3 attacks. Now Quickening is the advance and charge rolls, you can re-roll them and you get your D3. And Wings used to actually persist through your next movement phase. So you could basically move with fly in your next movement phase. They took that away, so it's just a 12-inch fly, essentially like during your psychic phase. So I guess Wings and Quickening, slight nerfs, but they're still the two that we need to really make Mephiston or the Librarian Dreadnought, to basically make them unit deleters or whatever. They would just kill. Why couldn't suppressors have 48-inch Quake bolts? I feel like they could, right? Because suppressors... Someone asked in the chat. Suppressors surely have a sergeant with them, right?
If you gave the sergeant, special issue war gear is a Quake bolt. I'm pretty sure it's 2 in the sergeant. Pull it up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got it here. It's
suppressor sergeant, 34 points.
Yeah, so suppressor sergeant could pay, and then there's a stratagem you have to pay, Eric, and that would let you...
Yes, you get your +1 to hit, and you get to shut off Overwatch all in the same unit.
Yeah, that's pretty nice, actually. I guess the only thing to be aware of is suppressors are heavy weapons and they're infantry, right? So you couldn't move them, or they're -1 to hit, which is a bit risky. But mind you, you only have to hit, right?
Shots.
Oh, but with Quake...
and you only have to hit.
But with Quake bolts, you only make a single attack, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. So
but you could shoot the sergeant with his Quake bolts, and you could shoot one of the other suppressors 3 shots. So you would be guaranteeing turning off the Overwatch at least, and it would be sort of 50-50 if you got that +1.
And if you really cared, you could CP reroll it and try it again.
Highland Phoenix is saying, I reckon Rites of War and Visage of Death for elite jump pack units are the ones to look at. One being a trait, one being a relic. Rites of War was the one from the Space Marine Codex, which gives you units within 6 inches or OBSEC, I believe. I've got a stupid cable in my way, sorry. Okay, so yes, I guess not too much to touch on with the psychic powers. If anyone has any questions about the psychic powers, drop us a message and we'll move on, because I want to get to this army list sooner rather than later, and I don't want to get shot by my wife for being over. Alright, so let's have a look at relics. The Wrath of Baal got a little bit better. I think before it used to only affect core units in the supplement. Now it's 2 inches to all Blood Angels jump pack units. I don't technically run Wrath of Baal very much, but I mean you can. And I guess if you're really trying to get units across the board quickly, I guess I've seen some people running Sangare Ancients with the Wrath of Baal, obviously. I just think the Ancient's very points heavy at the moment. I feel like, if you compare the Ancient, he's the cost of 4 Sangare Guard plus like a special weapon like an Infernal Pistol. It's really hard for me to justify that for 2-inch additional movement. Bear in mind, you're never really going to get into combat in turn 1 anyway, right? So, like, can't you just advance and try and hide in turn 1? Like, if the enemy's deployed badly enough to let you do a turn 1 charge, then I guess you're playing not a very good enemy, I would say. Icon of the Angel got buffed a little bit, so we can now reroll charges within 6. I like that. It was a bit annoying in supplement when it was just core units. Visage of Death is basically the opposites of Rite of War. And it basically lets enemy units within 3 inches lose any objective secured. So I guess that's what Highland was talking about in the chat, how you take your Warlord with Rites of War and Visage of Death, so anywhere your Sangare Guard or Vanguard Veterans or whoever they are, they just turn off the enemy's OBSEC and make your guys OBSEC. So a single unit or single model of yours in the objective steals that objective for you. And primaries are so important in 9th edition. The Hammer of Baal made a return, so I guess we can still have Thunder Hammer Smash Captain if you want. Galleon Staff is fine. I hate how it's D3 damage. I generally just don't like swingy melee weapons. I guess this is why I don't like Mephiston, as much as the Librarian Dreadnought with his flat 3 damage. And then I guess Crimson Plate is a Flesh Tearers one, where Flesh Tearer Terminators can move 1 inches more and they can pile 1 inch more. I guess if you run Terminators from Flesh Tearers, I've never actually seen those models, but if you do, it could be interesting. But again, 1 inch isn't going to really be anything amazing. And then finally, it's also another Chainsword, which is very much similar to the Teeth of Terror, but this time again a Flesh Tearer's Chainsword that does mortal wounds on a 5+. Oh,
So,
Quake
yeah,
Bolt.
Eric pointed out. Can't do it.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, okay, you can't do it. We got excited there. Quake Bolts is in... it's here, isn't it? Yeah. So there's a bolt... That shows how often I use... Oh, shit. What just happened there? I lose stream for a second. Maybe. Yeah, that shows how often I use Quake Bolts. It's a bolt weapon. It's like one bolt weapon. Alright, yeah. I guess probably an autocannon wouldn't be a bolt weapon. That would be fair to say.
So, over on Wrath of Baal, I agree with you mostly that it's hard to justify an entire character just to carry it. I think if you've already got somebody, putting that onto them is definitely big, because you can essentially add 4 in your movement if you're going to move and then advance. So you can cover a little more ground there, but definitely not worth bringing somebody just to carry it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess your jump pack infantry, what, they move 17, even if you only roll a 1, maybe? Because you get your 12 plus 2 twice, and then your plus 1 from Blood Angels as well. But so let's say you roll the d6 23 inches. You're still not going to have made it across the deployment zone, likely, right? You're not going to have made it across no man's land, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Another 4 inches if you're skirting a flank might get you into a terrain piece or some cover you need.
Yeah, and I mean, someone said basically it's 5 points cheaper, and you could have an Eradicator squad.
Yeah,
it's really hard. I've run the Sangor Ancient like once, I think, since we got the supplement, and he was so anticlimactical. The reason the Sangor Ancient always used to work for me is because that 5+ shrug, right? Like, people used to shoot him, and he used to genuinely be like, alright, 2+ save, so even if you're shooting with like a -2 weapon, it was a 4+, and then when they finally got through that 4+, it was like, alright, 5+ shrug on every damage, and the amount of times he survived on like 1 wound, and people would be looking at him with like, I've got nothing else, just fire, and I'm like, brilliant. But now it's just like, I just don't, he just doesn't survive for me, like no shrug at all. It's very difficult to make him survive. And then I guess let's crack on to special issue war gear. So I don't think any of these changed at all, maybe from 8th edition or from what was that book, the Psychic Awakening book. I think these are all identical to the Psychic Awakening book. So I think these are all very standard. I mean, the ones that shout out the most usefulness to me really are Adamantium Mantle, obviously being able to give any character a 5+ shrug. The Artificer Armour could definitely be useful on like your, the Sanguinary Priest, for example, because the Sanguinary Priest only normally has this 3+ save, so this would basically put him in Terminator Armour, 2+, 5+ Invulnerable save. I mean, I guess a lot of people have been running like the Armour Indomitus on that Sanguinary Priest, and I guess this is kind of... The Armour Indomitus gives you +1 wound, 2+ save, and then one phase of the game you get that 3+ save. So I guess Artificer Armour might be a little bit more consistent. But yeah, I mean, I think they both have their own strengths. And then Gleaming Pinions is always an interesting one, in that you can fall back and charge, and you can reroll any charges. So I guess like if you wanted to still run some sort of Smash Captain where you jump in, do a lot of damage, leave combat and go do some damage elsewhere, that's still generally very, very useful.
I think Armor Indomitus is going to be better if you can avoid multi-round damage, if you can save it for one spike round. But yeah, as you said, Artificer Armor is just going to be solid, consistent performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you end up... I think I ended up in a game where the Sanguinary Priest end up in combat with like... It was either a Mortarion or a Necron Catan, and it was quite nice to just be like, here's a 3+ save just for this phase, but I think in that game he actually died anyway. So...
that one you really, really needed.
Yeah. But you don't get more movement if advancing from Wrath of Baal. It's either the normal move or the fallback. Did we read that wrong?
Let's see, unit within 6 inches of the model, each time that unit is selected to make a normal move, advance, or fall back.
That sounds like you would get it for all three to
nope,
me.
Sorry. Add it to the unit's move characteristic until the end of the phase.
Oh, right. Okay, yes. So it would just be for one of the phases then.
Yeah. So I guess only 2 inches.
Yeah, see,
not quite as big.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, like... I mean... Some people rely on Wrath of Baal. I don't take it. I feel like there's better ways I can spend 125 points in my army. I mean, one way I really like to run, like, I like to take 5-man death companies with minimal weapons, right? So, like, just chainswords and bolt pistols. And my logic behind this, and it works in a lot of games, you'd be surprised, right? If you think about, we always talk in, like, my streams about, like, holding your own objectives, right? And people often hold their own objectives with a weak squad, right? Like, I mean... In 9th edition, some people actually hold their own objectives with scouts, right? So if you have a 5-man scout squad, I think a scout squad's maybe 75 points, 80 points. I was playing World Eaters a few weekends ago, and he holds an objective with 10 Chaos Cultists, right? And I think these cultists are basically 1 wound models, toughness 3, 6+ save, right? And it's just 10 of them. So they're going to sit in the backfield. So I drop down a 125 point death company, basically a death company just with chainsaws. I jump in and I do 30 attacks against those 10 guys. A few weeks ago I had to hit on 3s because we didn't have the Descent of the Angels. Now we could actually pay 1 CP and hit on 2s. So if you have like 30 chainsaws hitting on 2s, I don't know, you're going to hit 25 times. Those things have toughness 3, so we wound on 2s. So you're going to end up you're going to do 20 wounds, and cultists don't get a save against -1 weapons, right? Because they only save on 6+. So basically that 125-man death company has just completely removed his unit from the backfield. And now what has he got to do in that game? He actually had like some sort of crazy... I'm not always familiar with the Chaos units, but he had like a Centurion... it was some sort of Chaos Centurion Dreadnought, or... not Centurion, what's the Dreadnought that just get nerfed, not the Leviathan, the Contemptor, sorry. So it was a Contemptor with this giant chainsword that does 2d3 damage per swing on this chainsword, right? So this chainsword is just nuts. It's about twice as high as the model. And this Contemptor was basically running at my backfield, and by dropping in this crappy death company to just take out those cultists, the Centurion basically had to go back into his own backfield and clear out my death company. And fair enough, yeah, the Dreadnought completely killed the death company, but what it meant was, like, at the start of turn 3, one of his best close combat units is sitting as far back in his backfield, right? And he also lost a turn when he didn't have that objective, right? So, like, I scored more points than him in turn 2 or whatever. And if you compare that to, like, one Sangori Ancient that's making your guys move 2 inches more, I can't. I'd much rather have 5 Death Company that I can just drop in strategically, just to basically be a pain in the arse, or sometimes you pick all fronts, or sometimes you pick line breaker. So it's just like, well, I just need a unit in that quadrant of the board to get my 3 VP this turn. Well, I have that throwaway 5-man unit of Death Company. I actually don't care what that Death Company do. I'm just going to throw them down there in that corner and hold that corner of the board for me, you know?
Yeah, if you can pick up 3 and take 5 away from them, it's a good day.
Yeah, do that all day long, right? Cool. Okay, so special issue war gear. I'm trying to turn the page on my computer, and it's an actual book. Right, and yeah, okay. So we already covered a little bit on the Death Company Death Visions, and thank you for clarifying the fact that each model can only do 1 Death Vision unless you pay, and then you could do a second one. Because I totally missed that. So that's great. Okay, so I did want to go on a little bit about unique units and characters, but I'm going to jump back onto my main screen for a second here, and what we'll do is one second, I've lost you again. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll have a little look at this list from Vanguard Tactics, because a lot of people actually... I guess a bunch of people watched Vanguard Tactics Masterclass, and it was quite interesting. I finally managed to catch it. People were asking me on stream on Saturday if I'd watched it, and I didn't get a chance to yet. But I have watched it since, and did anyone notice a number of our old relics are in the Crusade section? Yeah, I did actually notice that. Stuff like the Angel's Wing and that are sitting in the Crusade section, so maybe in the future, I guess things will change. I mean, I guess the way 40k goes is... it goes round in circles, right? Like, you'll lose something one edition, you'll gain it back the next edition, it'll be tweaked slightly, so... okay, so let's have a look at this army list. So this was Stephen Box, I think is his last name, and he runs Vanguard Tactics, and I guess he's won a bunch of tournaments with Blood Angels, and I guess he's running different things from most people, but when I guess, like... he's also playing very defensively, right? Like, and I think that's smart. Like, I think as a Blood Angels player, as much as you want to get into close combat and get across the board quickly, you kind of want to be quite passive in turn one. It's hard to justify it. I want to do a stream where I look at a bunch of my battles, because a bunch of my recent victories I have been very passive in turn one, and I've actually like given up stuff like Linebreaker or all fronts on turn one to just basically guarantee that in turn two we make those charges and we start getting to work. So I guess he does the same thing. So yeah, let's just look at it by section if that's okay, Evan. And
yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's running Dante, and I guess this was actually just before the Codex drop, right? So he was running Speed of the Primarch. He can't do that now. It would have to be Heroic Bearing. But, I mean, I guess having that fight first...
Yeah, minor change, but...
Yeah, and then, so he runs a generic Space Marine Librarian, the Veil of Time, so that gives one unit the ability to fight first and reroll charges. The Null Zone to be able to turn off invulnerable saves. The Psychic Fortress to be able to put up the 5+ invulnerable save bubble in 6 inches. He equips this guy, I guess, with a jump pack. He makes him the Chief Librarian and gives him Psychic Mastery, so he has basically +1 to all his Psychic tests. And then he gives him Hero of the Chapter, and you need the relic to pick the 3rd power, so that's what this relic lets you do. And then he has the Sanguinary Priest, and he's just got him made as the Chief Apothecary so that he can basically resurrect... Actually, I don't know what Chief Apothecary does without the Warlord trait. Let me double check that.
I think it allows you to use your ability twice.
Chief Apothecary. Yeah, okay, so he can heal 2 units a turn, but he has to still pay 1 CP if he wants to bring a unit back to life. Okay. I mean, my thoughts on that are the Sanguinary Priest is generally pretty decent, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves apothecaries, and the priests seem like they're just a better version.
Yeah, but I feel like I like if I was going to pick one, I haven't picked one for a while. I think if I was going to pick one, I would take the Selfless Healer, because I think bringing one back to life every turn is generally quite strong, right? If you're running any sort of expensive models like Sanguinary Guard or Terminators, or even those ATVs, being able to bring back
the Invaders, or even Outriders,
yeah, anything above like 30 points, being able to resurrect one of them per turn. And if I'm correct, the resurrection happens at the end of the movement phase, right? So if he has the jump pack, he can jump and then resurrect. Let me just double check that. I'm sure it's the end of the movement phase. Combat Revival. Yeah, it's the end of the movement phase. So if he can move 12, he can advance up to 7, and then he just needs to be within 3. So basically, you're saying anything within 20 inches of him, he can bring back to life. I mean, and the fact that he can deep strike as well if he takes the jump pack, it's generally very strong. I think the reason that Steven's using Dante is so that he can do Chapter Master rerolls, right? I don't know if you saw Vanguard Tactics, but he did a very... Did you see the battle report of it?
I got through about half of it. I skipped around a little bit.
Okay, so in his battle report, what he did was really interesting. Is he forlonged Fury'd his Death Company forward, right? But he
strung them out.
Yeah, he strung them out so that the priest and Dante's auras could be still used on them, so they could make their turn 1 charge with full rerolls and also in the Assault Doctrine. I feel like using it that way, using the Chapter Master reroll that way is really smart, but I think you can make a better Chapter Master than Dante for less points. Like, Dante's Axe is just +3 strength, -3 damage, or -3 AP, 2 damage, which is the exact same as a Relic Blade. You can have a captain with a Relic Blade. You can give him a Storm Shield, so he's got the same save as Dante, the 2+4+. Then you can obviously give him, like I said, like you can make him survivable. My issue with Dante is he's not survivable. I play against an enemy player that is Sisters of Battle, and he always has those miracle dice, and he will always keep miracle dice of 6s. So if he hits you with an Infernal Gun or a Meltagun, or a Multi-Melta, he'll just instantly go that 6 damage. And then at that point, Dante's
kill
just
you in one shot.
Yeah, Dante's just dead. He has feel no pain. He is nothing. And I get that Dante's -1 to hit now, but quite often, if you think about, like, for example, Power Fists. So someone, if they're attacking Dante with Power Fist, they're already -1, right? So his -1 to hit actually makes no difference at that point.
Yep. So
I understand why Stephen's picking him for the Chapter Master rerolls, and I think used right, obviously he's using it right, and he showed a way we can use it really strongly in his stream. But if it was up to me, like, I've benched Dante for the moment just because I think a captain on a bike, or just a regular captain with like a Storm Shield and some sort of feel no pain. It's all well and good being able to get in there and do your infernal pistol shots or whatnot, but when you've got no way to protect against mortal wounds and you're just dead, to me that's a problem, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
I guess, like, you have this Librarian running with the Psychic Fortress aura, so I guess you could argue that Dante's maybe in the aura of Psychic Fortress, and you would have... But, sorry, Dante already has a 4+ invulnerable save, so the Psychic Fortress makes no difference. And yeah, this is really interesting when you compare it to, like, our Librarians, right? You're doing something completely different. You're trying to get, like, quite a weak Librarian in to cast Null Zone on an enemy target, and I guess if there's enough terrain there, and you have enough melee to shield the Librarian, this could definitely be very valuable. But I mean, to me it feels like there's a lot of ifs and buts, and a regular Librarian really isn't that survivable either, right? It's just like 4 wounds, toughness 4, 3+ save.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you are extremely close to that Librarian Dreadnought. I'm sure he has a reason why he takes this over that. I just can't see it off the top of my head.
Well, I think he takes it for the Null Zone to be able, because we can't pick that anymore, because we have to take from the Sanguinary Discipline, right? And if you pick a regular Librarian, you can still pick from the Space Marine Discipline, and it's called the Librarius. Mm-hmm. So he takes it. From my understanding, he takes it for the Psychic Fortress and the Null Zone.
I could see that. Null Zone's pretty big. Being able to shut off invulns and buff your guys is pretty good.
Yeah. To me, though, like, personally, I think if this was my list, I'd just take my Librarian Dread and I would deal with whatever invulnerable saves that enemy has. And I would be hoping that my 10 attack, flat 3 damage Librarian Dread would make up for it, right?
Just chew right through it.
Like I said, I had a game like 2 weekends ago where my Librarian Dread did 15 damage in a single turn against Mortarion. Mortarion's got like 18 wounds, right? So like Librarian pretty much killed him outright, and Mortarion's 500 points, Librarian's 155 points, He had invulnerable save. He was disgustingly resilient. It didn't matter. It still did 15 wounds to him in one turn. But yeah, I mean, I guess this guy is great at support, so that's why he's in his list. And I mean, I can see it just personally. I mean, I'm not sure what it's my choice. And then for troops, So he's running 3 squads of incursors. And I mean, incursors and infiltrators, I think, are by hands down our best troop choices. Incursors obviously have concealed positions, so you can deploy them anywhere in your far forward in the zone. You can use them to zone your enemy. I personally quite like the strength that infiltrators take as well, because they, they have that 12-inch deep strike denial, and against some certain units, like any sort of enemy that's going to deep strike and charge, the infiltrators are so strong against that, right? It just shuts it down completely. Like, there's not even a question of, like, can they do it? They just can't do it. And again, sometimes enemies like to drop in with meltaguns. Infiltrators are just completely immune to that because they have to be more than 12 away. Meltaguns obviously shoot 12. Chaos Terminators are nice for having those combi meltas. It just shuts that down as well. But yeah, I mean, what are you picking for troops at the moment? Do you agree with 3 incursors, Evan?
I think it's a play style choice and a list choice. I agree with you. I think the infiltrators are really good for screening out your backfield. I can definitely see the incursors being used to get on the flanks, get all your secondary points for his deployment zone, for table quarters. So I think it probably just comes down to how you play the rest of your army.
Yeah, and I mean, someone's saying in the chat that I guess, there's a few comments about the Librarian Dreadnought, right? Like, about the Librarian with the jump pack, how he can combo really well with Sanguinary Guard, obviously, because they don't have an invulnerable save. So taking away invulnerable saves combos up really nicely with them. That is very true. Yeah, and then a big 10-man death company, and like I said, he Forlorn Fury'd them before the battle started. It was a very clever move he did to get them into Assault Doctrine and full Chapter Master rerolls before the battle, or in turn 1. And then he did exactly what I mentioned earlier. He got into turn 1, he did it on the flank, he killed what he needed to kill, and then I think he just paid 1 CP and lifted them off with Upon Wings of Fire, ready to deploy them somewhere else to be a threat in another turn. And that's very much how I've been finding great success in the Death Company. Obviously, when they drop in, you still have that risk of not making the 8-inch charge, but I mean, you always have to deal with that, right? That's just a part and parcel of deep striking. He did run the Sangreal Ancient with the Wrath of Baal. Again, in his list, he used the Wrath of Baal very effectively to hop from terrain piece to terrain piece. Because he has 2 massive 9-man Sanguinary Guard, Sanguinary Guard really don't like to be shot, I guess, and the -1 to hit in close combat. Although it doesn't work against everything, it is generally quite strong. So, 2 strong squads of Sanguinary Guard with the ability to move that a little bit further. And like I said, he played very defensively. I don't think either Sanguinary Guard actually moved in turn 1. And yeah, I mean, some of my recent battles, I've had Sanguinary Guard and Vanguard Veterans literally not move in turn 1 or only jump forward like 6 to 8 inches into another piece of cover. You're really ready to react, and you want to be the one dictating when you fight with these squads of units, right? Because if you charge with Sanguinary Guard, you're going to do so much damage. However, if you get charged, they're not always that strong, right? Like, they have no invulnerable save, as we've mentioned a few times.
Yeah, you're probably going to lose them. If somebody is charging your guys, they're pretty confident. And the lack of invul and save, you're probably going to drop them before they get a chance to fight back.
Yeah, I got like 8 of them charged by like some Seraphim from Sisters of Battle, and I lost like 5 outright. It was very, like you said, like people aren't going to charge Sanguinary Guard unless they know they can kill them. So you need to. It maybe feels wrong, like I said, giving up maybe some early game points, but having them in the position they need to be to react to threats and going on the offensive when you want to go into the offensive is super important, I find. And then lastly, I guess, 5-man squad of Plasma Inceptors, and yeah, I mean, I think we know the strength of these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe...
So the thing that...
Go for it.
I was just going to say the thing that overall about his list really strikes me is it's an extremely mobile list. He doesn't have any backline guys. He doesn't have any heavy fire support. So I think that helps because he doesn't have to worry about screening out his backfield as much because he's probably going to be moving quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, I guess he'll hold something in the backfield within cursors, and everything else is moving forward. And in cursors have probably been deployed. At least one, maybe two squads have been deployed quite aggressively out with your deployment zone to basically set up positions. So he's going to try and use the Sanguinary Ancients, I guess, plus with advancing, so he can advance from cover to cover, and then, yeah, like I said, he made a really smart play where he put a unit of Sanguinary Guard in cover just off an objective, but I guess within 6. So when the enemy moves within that 6, he can heroically intervene, and then obviously because the enemy didn't charge him, it's you get to choose. With the change in the fight phase, he would actually get to fight with those Sanguinary Guard before the enemy, I guess, or you would at least have the option to pick to do that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I mean, like normally on my channel, we review lists and I sort of give them a criteria. I'm not sure I want to give this list a full review in that like it's a tournament winning list, and like maybe when I've won a few more tournaments I would be more happy to list it, but
yeah, obviously whatever he's doing here, he's doing for a reason, even if we're not quite sure what that is or if we disagree with it, but he's got the chops and the background to back it up. So
yeah, for sure. I've played a few, like the meta I play in is very win at all costs, and there, like I mentioned a few times, there's a guy who plays Iron Hands, and his lists they're probably some of the most shooty and most powerful shooting lists you've ever seen in Warhammer 40,000. Like one of the first times I played him, like I totally underestimated like how good Iron Hands were. This was like shortly after they got their new rules and stuff in 8th edition, and I jumped forward pretty much into no man's land. On a normal day, you know, the enemy might shoot 3 or 4 of my units off the table, and I would be like, oh, that's fine, I'm going to jump forward again in turn 2 and make the charge. And I think we worked out that he shot like, I think it was like 1,200 points of my army off the table in turn 1, and he actually had like, I want to say 200 or 300 points actually if his army was in reserve. So he didn't, if he'd had his whole army on the table, he could have probably shot off like 1,500 to 1,600 points of my army in turn 1, and I just threw my hands up and said, like, can we just redeploy? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, you've won that. There's absolutely, I can't do anything. Like, you've killed so much. Like, I did not realize how much stuff you could kill. Because they have that thing where they, like, in Heavy Doctrine, they don't take penalty for move and shooting, and everything was an additional -1. And he's got some sort of stratagem where, like, when he rolls 6s, everything does double wounds. And there was a grav stratagem as well, where you could reroll all his hits and all his wounds with grav cannons. It was phenomenal, right? It was just like, yeah, so like if you were playing a list like this against a list like that, and there wasn't enough cover on the table, this list would super struggle. You know, like you wouldn't be able to get close enough. Unless there was very dense cover, and I guess different tournaments or different maps or different people choose how much cover is on the table, right? So obviously this is working in the meta with him, and I did see the map that he played on, right, and it does seem like there was a decent amount of cover and there was a decent amount of obscuring cover, but because he was playing against Ultramarines, and in some ways Ultramarines are similar to Iron Hands, maybe not quite as shooty, but I mean arguably a very shooty or a very powerful shooting Space Marine chapter, right?
Yeah, and I think inside that masterclass, he talked about at one point that he was playing on a very sparse table, and he basically decided his only option was to just saturate the target list and push everybody up, try and get in as fast as he could.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the strength of the Wrath of Baal comes in, right? Like in other games, maybe that isn't so strong, or isn't so required. But yeah, okay. I think I'm going to probably have to call it just about now, Evan. I guess maybe we can hook up in the future if you like, and we can talk about maybe unique units and characters, and maybe we can come up with some of our own, like show people what the options are for not taking the special characters, right? And how you can build something that's probably going to be a bit stronger. Unless of course you want to run Commander Dante. I mean, there is something prestigious about having Dante or Astrath, etc. in your army list, you know?
Yep. It's definitely fun to have the name guys out there.
The fighting first stuff, Rob, has come up a few times, and just to clarify it, if it tells you that your model can fight first, right, like it does in Speed of Primarch, it means that if your opponent charges you, they get to pick one charged unit to fight, and then you can fight with the unit that can fight first. And basically, if you just consider the fight first unit as like a free interrupt, you know how you can do a tactical interrupt for 2 CP? I forget the name of that stratagem. But you can pay 2 CP to interrupt in the close combat phase. Essentially, that is what your fight first unit gets the ability to do, right? So I guess, again, in Stephen's list, he picked Veil of Time to be able to put fight first on a unit. And although they actually don't quote-unquote fight first, it can make your opponent have to reconsider. You know, if the opponent does 2 charges, then they know, alright, that unit can definitely interrupt. After I fight with my first charge unit, then they can fight with that unit, so I kind of have to fight that unit first, or I fight with another unit and then they get to fight first with that unit. So, but if you only have one unit with that ability, like Mephiston, if they charge Mephiston, then they just know, well, we'll just fight Mephiston first and we'll kill him, and then that trait is completely useless, right?
Yeah, if they can manage to bring him down, it's null and void. Otherwise, it helps you out. But I don't know how often you're going to get that trigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if your opponent is well, you know, like usually, I don't know about your games, but quite often when you get to the close combat phase, one of the first things I'll ask my opponent is like, how many CP have you got, right? Like, I want to know, is he going to interrupt between me fighting with my charges? Because if he is, I need to think about it. Otherwise, I can just do all my charge units first. And if I know that your Warlord's fighting first, then I'm just going to be like, right, the unit that charged your Warlord will fight there first, and then I'll get to do all my other charges without worrying about it. So yeah, I just want to say thank you, Evan, for jumping on. I know that we had to schedule a couple of different times to try and get this to work, but I think we got through a lot of the new rules, and I think you definitely kept me right on some of them. So thank you for that, and just want to do another quick shout out for anyone that's joined later in the stream, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks so much for having me on. Honestly, it's good to just sit and talk to people about tactics and Blood Angel specific stuff. Don't get a chance to do that very much. For anybody that wasn't here in the beginning, I'm Evan. I'm from Origin Painting. It's a real small channel right now. Painting up tabletop plus. Right now it's mostly Warhammer stuff, but it's kind of whatever I want to paint. Tips, tricks, 6-minute minis, real quick bite-sized videos to get you through painting. So yeah, if you have any questions or any comments, anything you want to see painted, just head on over and let me know.
Yeah, and you've been doing a lot of Blood Angel stuff recently, right?
Yep, trying to max out this army so I have as many options as possible.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you for jumping on, and I'll put a link to your channel in the description below. So do me a favor, guys, and go over and subscribe to Evan. He does great videos, and yeah, it's been really nice to have you on the stream, especially with the lockdown going on. I don't know what your country's like, but over here it's been pretty difficult to see people, and it's been pretty difficult to just chat Blood Angels. So this has been super helpful, and yeah, totally do this again if you're up for it.
Absolutely. And yeah, over here we got about nothing. I'm just about to install Tabletop Simulator and start playing there because just nothing going on. Yeah.
All right, guys. So yeah, thank you very much to everybody that tuned in. Sorry we didn't get to so many questions in the chat today. We're kind of on limited time, but yeah. Also in the video description, there's a link to the Facebook group, and yeah, I mean, I'll answer questions. Evan will be in there as well, so he can answer any questions that you've got. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll have a bit more time tomorrow, and we'll be on a live stream looking at army lists. There's been a lot of army lists coming in, I guess, with the new rulebook, which is great. Like, it's nice to have loads of army lists to look at. So hopefully we'll catch some of you guys tomorrow. And yeah, that's it then. So yeah. I guess we'll see you all tomorrow. And thanks again for being here tonight, Evan.
Yep, absolutely. See you guys later.
All right. By the blood are we made. Peace. And I can't find my media.